Hey everybody, I've got a funny video for you. It's a build that is for Nekros. It was originally intended for Netracells. Um, and it's basically just, if you watched my Valkyr video, it's kind of the same thought process. Like with Nekros, his abilities are largely not great, just built with Desecrate in mind. The reason why you might consider bringing him into Netracells, I don't think you should, but the reason why I originally thought to bring him into Netracells is because, hey, maybe I could get some, passive Stella while I just incidentally knock out these Netracells. However, in spite of giving him Gladiator mods, in spite of giving him a critical shard, granted, my Valkyr has like 3 purples and her critical damage is just through the roof compared to him, and he needs a lot more armor for survivability. And granted, this is a health regen, which is not really adding on to his effective HP. It's just a really nice general quality of life for despoil reasons. Um, but yeah, no, we're just running adaptation, gladiator for DPS, and then 3 range mods because you kind of need that for just desecrate reasons. Although I suppose if you're playing solo, range is not as important, especially if you're in melee range, then I guess the desecrate range doesn't matter, but even then I don't know what you would really put in place of these. I suppose just even more health and armor, to the point where then you could maybe shave off some of these armor shards and put in more melee crit damage. Heck, maybe even um, like if I throw on Primed Flow on him, could you maybe throw in a purple towel? Yeah, so yeah, if you threw a Primed Flow onto him, you could potentially start using purple towel melees instead of reds. That's an idea. However, I'm of the belief with Nekros, you're not really bringing him to like, hardcore high-end content, minus maybe Netracells like I was thinking, to maybe get more Stella. However, I've since realized even when you do bring him into Netracells, the desecrate rate on, or just even the drop rates on enemies for dropping Stella is so terrible, and you are just genuinely better off running mirror defense. If you're not familiar with mirror defense, there's like 5 Stella boxes in between points A and B that you could just crack open. There's like 2 Stella each in them, so 2 times 5 is 10. If you have like a booster, it turns into like 20, and then anytime you get those mirror defense points, it gives you another 5, and then anytime you get subsequent, like you get 50 points right off the bat, that's 5. You get another 50 during the same wave, you get 3. So if your KPM is through the roof and you're collecting the glyphs as fast as possible, and if you incidentally have a booster, you can average around like 60 or 80 Stella under 5 minutes. Whereas just running a Nekros in a Netracell, which my Valkyr can clear in like 6 to 7 minutes about, if, the tile's nice, I'm not like running into walls and the kill rate is fine. My Nekros with this rather similar setup, minus, some Archon shards, um, he tends to average around 10 or 11 minutes, and he's only getting like, if I'm purposefully excluding any would-be like Stella containers that I'm getting, I usually get like 2 or 4 more Stella per run, but it's at the cost of a Netracell that's almost twice as long, just about. And I'm definitely struggling more because he in terms of survivability, Valkyr he is not. Valkyr literally the 3rd highest armor value in the whole game. Um, And also, unlike Valkyr, we actually are, at least in this build, I was factoring into some of his abilities, namely just his 3. But I suppose if you want to do some like, I don't know, charity service and go into Publix rather than doing it solo for a Netracell, you could just, exist in a public Netracell, just make sure that, because like, short of the occasional rogue void rig, um, this much armor, the adaptation, and gladiator just for survivability. And granted, I also have arcane blessing just because 500 health is not too much. Arcane Blessing is a nice way to scale it up. Also, just even if I was to like toss in a health mod, I think he'd only get like maybe 200 or 300 more health, and 800 health with that much armor, even with adaptation, still kind of shaky. But Arcane Blessing gives him easily another 1000-ish health, which gives adaptation more room to adapt, and it's also just puts all these red health orbs that usually tends to be what drops out of Desecrate. It just puts it to use, so um, not by any means necessary, but it's pretty nice. And then Arcane Avenger is just further escalate the crit chance. Um, but I mean, yeah. So that's a build you could run into Netracells, but I don't think you should do it. Um, so yeah, that's that video. Alternatively, just hey, if you drop the gladiator mods. This is what I incidentally run if I'm running like so this loadout's for the Edun and I'm running melee duplicate on my Edun, because if you incidentally run if like for Nekros, while we're on the topic of Nekros, this is less a Netracell build, but just because Murmur, they're not as they have resistance against Slash. Granted, the status is still very effective against them, but just in terms of raw damage, Slash as a damage is not great on them. But the Edun, if you run melee duplicate, you incidentally run galvanized steel, which puts you at almost 100% crit chance. 70% is like most of it will crit. However, if you run Gladiator Might, which gives you more critical damage, just getting the combo multiplier up just gets it to be a little more consistent. So we don't want to go all in on crit on Gladiator mods if we're running the Edun in particular. It's just one of my favorite pole arms just because it's got this quirky throw attack, and because it's kind of not really, it's hard to aim, but you know, sometimes you're just running and there's an enemy down a hallway and you don't want to bother to run up to him. You can just chuck the spear at him and then incidentally get a speed bonus. Like it's a heavy attack that you don't actually want to use all that much. I mean, I suppose you can make like a ground slam build, which I see a lot of people doing with the melee Dowdy arcane and other weapons, but I'm not a fan of that playstyle. It's so repetitive looking, and granted, this is coming from the guy that enjoys just twirling the quick attack, just spamming it, and then occasionally using a heavy attack. I like a little variety in my melee. But anywho, yeah, no. This gets you close enough to consistently proc melee duplicate. Gladiator Might just gives you even more critical damage. Also, hey, Galvanized Steel as a bonus also gives you more critical damage. I remember the first time I read this mod, I kind of glanced over it, but hey, reading's important as it turns out. It's not just critical chance, unlike True Steel or Sacrificial Steel. It is also critical damage when you get kills. So this damage just starts to ramp up when you get kills with it. And then incidentally, if you don't have Galvanized Steel, because I know getting Vetus Essence is kind of pricey, there is also Sacrificial Steel. If you use this in place of Galvanized Steel, it puts you at a solid 108% critical chance, which will just make everything will just be yellow crit. Everything will proc melee duplicate. Once in a blue moon, something will orange crit, just because we have that extra 8%, and like, also because we're still running Gladiator Might because we want to crit, because if our whole thing is critting consistently and critting twice, we want those crits to matter more. And also, the reason you might notice why I'm not running elements is just because, like, hey, maybe you want to bisect enemies for more Desecrate reasons. Speaking of, I've tried this on the Murmur. I could be wrong. It could just be because Stella drop rates are so miserable as is. I don't believe the Murmur can even be bisected, because at least visually, when you kill the sand, like the limb ones, they just kind of evaporate into sand, and then the robots, they already just kind of seem to be modular and just explode into pieces regardless of how you kill them. So at least visually, they don't seem like they're being bisected. And if they are actually being bisected, the drop rates are so miserable that even like bringing this weapon to fight them, um, and hopefully bring more loot out of them, just it's so miserable compared to just doing one run of a 5-minute mirror defense. Like, just don't bother. But hey, if you're gonna do it, I suppose this is the build you could run. Like, maybe you're just chilling it with friends in a Netracell. But hey, yeah, no, your DPS is not gonna be great because you kind of need more effort. You kind of need to put more effort into surviving. I suppose if you wanted to do some like shield gatey build with rolling guard, I suppose that's an option. But you never know with like the Netracell stipulations and the key glyphs. Like maybe you'll get something that just like constantly drains your energy, and then you can't benefit from augur mods anymore because you don't have the energy to even cast your spells. I just find Nekros to be a better health tank in general, and you can get by. Granted, it is a bit steep, like these 2 armor shards, and then there's just this one for quality of life. Despite just to go into why I really like the health regen, even though it's not great as effective health and survivability, it's just quality of life for despoil. Like if you ever need to walk away for like just a minute or two, and granted, like I'm not saying you could do this to AFK farm, and I highly don't suggest you do that because DE comes down very hard on people that a lot of their balancing and a lot of their philosophy is designed against AFK farming. So please, please, please do not even think of like trying to just abuse this offsetting despoil and then just like going AFK in a farm. This is more just here for like, hey, I have to take care of something real quick and I don't want to bleed out, but I still would like to wring out more loot as possible. That's more the intention. Also just for like, if I'm say in like, I'm waiting at extract, there's a minute left. Just peace of mind knowing I'm not going to continually lose health until my teammates eventually drag their feet to extract. But yeah, I'm not really inclined to give a demonstration because again, the run it's not going to be a great run. Like it's doable, but it just takes longer because you just don't have as much damage. Like I suppose I could just bring a better melee weapon. But anywho, I hope this was educational. I hope I saved some people with stress and answered some possible Stella question farmings. Stella question. Oh, good night.